Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. This episode, it's one of those things where I need to actually figure out what we're going to call this because we've done a lot of like special episodes, but I don't have a name for them. So if you've got a name, feel free to put it in the comments and let us know. But yeah, we're doing a special episode because if you're a Brunel student, it's election time. You might even recognise the person next to me, Vic. Before we continue, Vic, could you, for anyone who may not know you from the 2 episodes that you've already done with us, could you just introduce yourself and then if you could let us know what you've been up to recently?
So I'm the Vice President of College of Health, Medicine and Life Sciences. So I'm like a Students' Union representative. And what I've been up to, apart from my regular boring university meetings, I guess just running the campaigns. One of them we recorded episode on period campaign. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, when these guys know I'm the worst when it comes to which corner of YouTube stuff appears. But on one of the corners, the episode will appear about the campaign that Vic did. And also, I guess we'll also do one on her episode where we discussed, making the most out of uni, which sort of links to what we're going to be talking about today. Because, I'm glad also before we go into it that you mentioned as well that sometimes meetings can be a bit boring. But unfortunately it's the things of it's the working life. It's the working life. But yeah, it's really great because people might recognize you from some of the videos you've done. You've done a lot of reels recently. For anyone who doesn't know who's a Brunel student, elections have started and the nominations are coming in. We're going to be getting into the period of actually voting soon. And that's what this episode's all about. It's all about voting in the coming elections, sort of explaining to you like what it is, like what are the roles, what do union officers do. Let's start off first with what the elections are, because for many people, whether you're a student who's been here for ages, whether you're sort of a new master student or new PhD student, even if you're a new member of staff, you might not really know about the election process, the election period. Let's start off with like, I wouldn't say the first question, say the first segment of the episode. What are elections for, and essentially why do we have them?
Okay, so the union kind of elections is the most important thing of the union because we democracy is core of our organization. So during the elections, we elect our student representatives, like full-time officers, like myself, part-time officers, so liberation officers, and also student assembly chairs. And then from that, all of those people then throughout the year, throughout 2 years, however long they stay in the post, shape the union and the university. So it's actually really important for all students to get involved because the union and our democratic processes and our different meetings, different committees have a real and direct impact on students' life. That's why it's important.
No, definitely, I definitely agree. And yeah, if this is your first episode, you might not know, but I've been at Brunel since 2017. And yeah, like you mentioned, you see how each officer, like you said, whether they're there for a year, whether they're there for 2 years, you see how they shape the union, and not only, I guess, what the union does, but also how the union helps students on a wider level. I think that's really key that you mentioned it there, that these elections are important. It's not just, I mean, I say elections, like even if it's like a real, oh, well, this is a real election, but you know what I mean? Like if it's a government election, you might even argue that those are sometimes pointless. But yeah, it is real because this is, I guess, change that you can see on campus. And whether it's, to do with societies, whether it's to do with the election process itself, because that's definitely changed. And we can sort of get into that a bit later. Whether it's to do with, looking at the university as a whole, academic stuff, society stuff, union officers are essentially involved across the field. Like you mentioned, they can be boring, but, our officers attend university meetings as well. That's really great. And thank you for sort of letting us know that. I guess next thing, so we talked about what the elections are. Could we know a bit more about like the different roles that are available? Because I know the section after this will be just sort of talking about the difference between part-time and full-time officers. But yeah, if we could go into like what the different roles are, because you briefly mentioned them there. And I think one thing before probably should have said this at the start, but it's as you mentioned, it's a position that you can do for 2 years or 1 year. You get voted. I mean, you need to get voted in twice. It's not like a guaranteed 2-year job. But again, it's like you mentioned, it's something that you have to do after. You can do for 2 years if you wanted to. But yeah, let's go into what are some of the different roles available.
So we have full-time officers, and there are 3 education and welfare officers, one for each college. And then there is a kind of new role, actually, a community living officer that is supposed to be because a lot of times the officers that go into roles shape a lot what they do, which is great as well. So it's supposed to be like society, sports clubs, on campus living, like the food, the accommodation and stuff like that. And then we have the part-time officers. So God, please don't forget any because so we have EU officer that, well, I think the titles are pretty self-explanatory. Then environmental and ethics officer. We have LGBT plus officer, gender and diversity officer, as well as international students officer, BAME student officer, and the disabled students officer. Yes. It's much easier when I write it down. And then apart from that, obviously those are like part-time, and they focus on those specific groups and serving them, listening to them. And then we have student assembly chair, which is someone who chairs our student assembly, which is our like one of most important bodies that put motions forward, vote for stuff, can actually affect our bylaws and policies, everything like that. That's within the union. And also we have NUS delegates, so National Union of Students Union. And this is someone who gets the voting rights to go to the conference that's going to happen 15th of March. So you get to go to the conference and then shape something outside of Brunel for all students. That's all the rules. There's a lot.
No, but yeah, I guess congratulations are in order because to remember all of this that's knowledge and power because yeah, I know I definitely couldn't do that. But no, it's really thank you for sort of saying that, and I think it's nice, sort of like you mentioned, that they all have different. Like they're all different in their own roles, if that makes sense. So like you mentioned, some of them are shaping stuff within colleges. Some of them are shaping things for certain types of students. Some of them are shaping things for the wider sort of student union. And I think it's really great to see that sort of level of sort of difference that can happen in elections because I think sometimes, like, I mean, sort of like we were talking about there, sometimes students just assume, okay, so if you're a union officer, you're literally just like you're stuck in the union, you just work within the union, you do some stuff. I know we sort of when planning this episode, sort of we spoke to different people. I know they were saying as well, like sometimes students don't even know who their officers are. But it's great to see, that there's sort of like a wide breadth of knowledge that can happen, and getting to sort of learn about it is really good. You mentioned, and I think this is going on to the next section, they are part-time and full-time officers. Could you explain the difference between the two? Because I know there's a key difference with a few things, on whether it's salary, whether it's like when you can actually do those positions. Could you just let us explain those?
So full-time officers are the officers that work full-time. It's basically that's where the name comes from, and you're also getting paid. You can do it. You can't do it alongside your studies because it's a full-time job, 9 to 5, pretty impossible. So you can do it in the middle of your studying, like I am, either by taking abeyance or by doing it as a placement. And that's not all colleges and not all courses. It has to, like, you have to get agreement from your, but for example, my college is pretty happy for people to do it. I'm not the first one to. And then you can also do it after you graduate. So straight after you graduate, kind of when you enter the elections, you still have to be a student. Otherwise, you're not eligible. And then the part-time roles are voluntary roles. I think the expectation is 5 hours a week you give us your time, which is obviously not like we don't check it. It's just kind of to give you an idea. And that you can do alongside your studies. So whatever you do, placement, not placement, you can do it. And that's the same for the student assembly chair, and then NUS delegates only go on this one conference. So it's a 2-day job.
Okay. No, that's really great. And I think kind of like you mentioned, it is key to highlight, like you said, some of them paid, some of them not, some of them you can do as placements, some of them you can't. Did you do yours as a placement?
Yeah, so my first year I took abeyance because I'm so dedicated, and then my second year I did it as a placement. So now I'm doing it as a placement. Yeah, because a lot of stuff is kind of, you can write a good assignment assessment from this. There's a lot of experience, so and a lot of transferable experience as well. So whatever course you are or with limits, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's, we always talk about it here, that it's great to have transferable skills, and sort of like you said, like looking for opportunities where you can gain those transferable skills, whether it's being a union officer, whether it's, doing a part-time position or a full-time position. Like you mentioned, we mentioned at the start that you've done amazing campaigns. And those are great things that sort of they're essentially attached to your name, and you've got examples of work, and whether you sort of want to go into campaigning, whether you want to go into project management, event management, whatever, you've got all that experience which employers will look at and they'll be like, this is amazing. And from someone who's like done placements, someone who's been on the other side of interview panels and all this stuff, that's what essentially at the end of the day employers are looking for. They're looking for you to have that unique experience, those like transferable skills, that thing that you say and it's just like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, if I just can add to it, I think it's absolutely right, and I think there's not many opportunities that people who just start their journey in university or are in university. There's not other place that you can get this level of experience, because as officers we are invited to senate or council and to sit on those huge meetings that kind of any organization would have. It's absolutely amazing, and I don't think it's you have to get there normally, and here you're just like thrown on there and you just start. When you go into looking for jobs, you start with this experience that no one else has, to be in these meetings. People actually listen to you. You can see how it all operates. So yeah, I think it's really great.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's an amazing point you mentioned, that being given opportunities where if you, like you said, if you join Brunel, you might not necessarily be invited to big meetings with like senior people at the university, but as an officer, you sort of get to do that as a part of your job. And like you said, that's really key things to have. It's key things to show. It's also great. We mentioned, again, I'm saying we mentioned a lot of things, but we do. But networking, like you said, it's a great opportunity to network, because then you've sort of like built a network, whether you're sort of working on campus, you're working with, your job requires you to do stuff off campus. You've then got all these like different areas where you sort of like built up your skills, and you can be like, okay, yeah, cool. I'm looking to, I don't know, after I graduate, work in a company that does this. I actually know from my work as an officer that there's this person at the university who specializes in this, and they know this company, and it's sort of like slowly building up your network, which we love to say on the podcast. because essentially your network, I mean, it's not my phrase, but like people say your network is your net worth, and it helps you to sort of build up your experience. But also as a graduate, it helps you to sort of figure out where you can apply and who you can start to contact and be like, okay, I'm coming to the end of my course. Like, can I work with you? Is there placement opportunity? Oh, not placement. Are there graduate roles? Are there graduate scheming organization? Things like that, which I think it's really good. We're going to go on to like questions on the process, because I think for most students, whether they're, like I said, whether they're first year, second year, or third year, whether they've never been at Brunel before, whether they've been to another university, the process of elections changes every year, one, but also it's different. It might be different. It's different most of the time at different universities. So like I know when I started, it was online and in person, from about like 10 to 4 or like 10 to 5. Again, that's now changed. It's completely different. Like I said, from being here from 2017, you see all the changes. And yeah, I feel like students might not necessarily know about the process. I know you also did a reel recently about like how to vote online and things like that. But yeah, we'll sort of like I'll throw in a question for this segment every like once in a while. But yeah, let's start off with the voting. Let's start off with the nominations first. To nominate, are there any requirements for each of the positions? So let's start with full time first. So for the three positions, are there any requirements going into those positions?
So you have to be a student, Brunel student, and that's it.
Okay,
that's it, really.
So could a student from another? So let's say a student from CBAS, could they apply for?
Oh. No. So any student, sorry, I forgot about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, so any student can apply for the community living officer, but for the colleges, you have to be from the college. But because you're still representing all students, every single student can vote for each of those positions. But to apply, you have to be from that college. Yeah.
Perfect. That makes sense. Now, again, I probably won't list out all of the offices because, again, like I've forgotten, and I've been sitting here we're recording it. I remember it, but for the part-time officers, again, is there sort of like a requirement that you have to be part of a group that you're sort of going to represent, or is it that any student can sort of apply and do any position that they want?
No, you have to be part of the group you represent. A lot of them, like, LGBT plus, like it's you self-identify, and people just, people don't want to like cheat on it, so it's fine. But like they wouldn't ask you for like proof that you're gay, so yeah, you have to be from those groups, which I think makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Because it wouldn't necessarily be the best thing if the women's officer is a man. Because then you're not really representing the group that you're sort of supposed to be representing. But yeah, no, thank you for that, because I think that's one of the things as well that sometimes students can get confused about is nominations of like, oh, can I sort of go for? And I think, like you mentioned, sometimes students might be a bit concerned of, oh, if I go for let's say the disabled disability officer, and they might not necessarily have a visible disability, but they have a disability, they might feel concerned, or they might feel like, oh, because my disability isn't like a physical ailment, but is a mental one, people might not necessarily feel like they can vote for me because, but I think it's really nice that, like you said, like no one's, going around saying, all right, cool, we need to see your like university record and check that everything sort of tallies with the roles you've nominated for. And again, like you said, it makes sense that, if you're a CHLMS student, you wouldn't necessarily go to be, involved with anything to do with CBAS because you've never been taught under there and you don't really know much about that sort of college. And like you said, every college does things differently. So I guess nomination wise, can a student go for more than one position is the first part. Second part is if they can go for more than one position, is it that, so I guess with colleges, so with the full-time one, and I guess the college one, yes, they're only going for their college, but could they go for their college and then let's say this new role that you mentioned? Or can they go for like one of the college roles and then also go to try and be one of the part-time officers as well?
So no and no. You can only go for one position with one exception, which is you can go for any position and the NUS.
Okay.
Because that's just for one conference, and so you like we won't need you for the rest of the year. So for example, last year I was a full-time officer and I was also elected as a NUS delegate, and that is the only exceptions. Apart from that, you can only apply for one.
No, that's perfect. Because even like not even just thinking of like having too much power, but also, trying to manage the workload of like if you're the EU officer, but then you're also like the CHLMS vice president, like trying to do all of those things. Because I can imagine workload might be a bit much. But yeah, that was good to hear.
Yeah, I think you couldn't do the role on like at the same time. I think you just couldn't because it's a lot. But even if you just wanted to say no to one, that obviously would like create a lot of confusion within the election, because what if you win both? Like, yeah, so no.
No, definitely. But I think something to mention about that is, you yourself, you do a lot of work and you're not, I mean, yes, you're the VP for criminals, but you also do work that sort of could fit into like the other officers' role. So I guess my point is, even if you went for one position, that doesn't stop you sort of collaborating and working with other officers, right?
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't. I think it's highly encouraged that you do. My favorite part of the job is doing the campaigns that are outside of maybe the academic structure, because that's less exciting, even though it's very important and it's interesting, but less exciting. So yeah, I think you're encouraged to. And historically, I think all officers, even the ones that go for colleges, would have campaigns, and on their manifesto would say, I really care about mental health. I want to do something around that. And that's obviously for all students, not just your college. And similarly for part-time positions, because those are like liberation roles, a lot of times they just would like to talk to each other, would like to get together with events that one is organizing. So yeah, definitely you don't have to be like closed within the job role. I think one thing that is really beautiful about all of those roles is that's very open and really up to you.
Oh wow, that's really good. But yeah, I think unless you can think of another question or point about nominations, we can go on to the voting if you want.
I think that's it for nominations.
Okay. All right, did good. So yeah, let's go on to the voting. Because like I said, there's different types of voting. Actually, one point that sort of came, but only because I remembered the voting and I said like it can be online and in person. The nominations, to my knowledge, you don't have to sort of like go to the student union and fill out a form and say I'm nominating myself for this position. It's something you can do online, right?
It's something you can only do online, really. And I think we usually give like a week or 10 days for you to nominate yourself. Most people just do it on like the last day, so no one sees. So until the nominations are closed, all manifestos sent, no one can see who nominated themselves, which can be very important to people when campaigning. So yeah, just online or our website.
Actually, I realised there should be something between the nominations and voting, which is the campaign itself, campaigning to during the election. Because I know from both going for positions myself, but also from having friends who worked in the union and things like that, I know that there is a process that the candidates must follow. So I guess thinking more from the candidate side of things, what are some of the rules as a candidate you have to be aware of? Because I know two of the big ones is one, obviously, where you put your posters. Because I know a lot of people sometimes forget that there's places where you can and you can't put posters, even forgetting to take down their posters, but that's a whole different thing entirely. But also I know as well that sometimes people forget the whole idea of your campaign team and how your campaign team's actions can actually impact your campaign itself and eventually could possibly in the worst case scenario, lead to the person sort of having to withdraw or be removed from the election because of the actions of their campaign team. So yeah, feel free, you can expand on those two areas. But if there's also any other areas of like rules when it comes to campaigning that you think are really important, yeah, let us know.
Yeah, so the poster one is probably something that unless you're being horrible with it, you probably wouldn't get, thrown out. It's mostly because you can damage surfaces. So there's also rules like what can you use to attach stuff. Very strict rule because we want the elections for everyone to have fair opportunities. And obviously people have different financial situations and stuff like that. So it's the union that prints posters for you, and you can't print your own on top of that because everyone has to have the same amount, and that applies to the flyers as well. The flyers around the costs. Actually, we offer, well, we don't offer, but we let students have a budget to an X amount, so everyone can use that X amount of money, but you have to disclose everything, have receipts and all of that, again, to make sure that someone, isn't a billionaire and is like making a huge party. And obviously, they're gonna win, but someone else could never have done that. So yeah, apart from that, I think what is very important and people like to break is where you campaign. There are certain areas. For people that maybe don't want to, participate, but you should. They don't want to be disturbed, and also, well, I think this is the main reason. So that includes stuff like you can't be in library campaigning because people are working. You can't be like standing at the doors, not letting people in. You can't be too close to where the voting happens because then there's a risk of you just like bringing and throwing people there. So I don't know exactly what are the areas this year. All the candidates always give a candidate briefing and they have to attend it, otherwise they can't be a candidate anymore. So this is very important, I think. A big thing we have this year is we used to have what's it called, the kind of a formal process where societies can enforce you and post about you on social media. But for this to be fair again, you'd have to have like a meeting with all the candidates for that role. You have to ask questions, then the committee talk, and they can choose whoever they want. But we completely scrapped that this year, just because there's a lot of societies and a lot of sports clubs, and though this was one of our like most complained things about, because people just either don't even know about the rules, they're like, oh, my mate is running, I'm just gonna do it for them, and they know everyone on the committee, which, like, people don't have to have bad intentions, but then other candidate is like, oh, I wasn't given a chance to speak about my manifesto. So that's a big rule.
Oh wow! No, I didn't even know that was the new thing that they're thinking about. Because yeah, I think again, like I said, from both sides of it, from being a candidate, but also from, like I said, endorsing people and things like that. It is. I mean, elections, like you said, are really important. They're really good. But I know that, like you said, for some students, it can sometimes be a lot because you'll sort of just be, if you're a Brunel student or recent graduate, you'll know that like you're trying to walk down, walk around campus, and then bam, it's just like, here's a flyer. Like, have you voted yet? Oh, if you haven't voted yet, come to this place or come to that place, or it'd be really cool. It's just 2 minutes of your time. And I understand, like you said, for some students, sort of like all that sort of like in your face type campaigning can be a lot. But yeah, like you said, it is nice that there are rules in place that sort of help to not only look after students, but also, like you said, manage candidates and make things fair. Because, like you said, if someone's billionaire can afford to throw like a massive party, then yeah, that's a bit of a disadvantage. But yeah, no, I think it's really important, and I think it's sort of not only making the process fair, but also looking after like I said, the students, but also making sure the process is democratic, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. feel like there was something else I wanted to say about candidates, but I have completely forgotten. So we're gonna go on. Oh, if you've got,
I think I remember you mentioned that because candidates can have people campaigning for them.
Yes.
So um, everyone gets a limited number of people who so it's usually friends campaigning for you, and that means like giving people flyers and stuff like that. And I think this year for a campaigning section, it's two campaigners. Um,
So we had some technical difficulties, but we're going to literally pick up from where we left off. So I know, Vic, you were talking about campaigns and how campaign teams are sort of changing. Could you let us know a bit more about that?
So I was saying that every candidate can have campaigners, their friends campaigning for them. And again, this is something that you need to disclose with people. You need to have names written down, and you can't have more people campaigning for you than the limit of what it's set up this year. And it's again for the same reasons as before, to make sure that it's fair.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I know, like I said, been here a while, so I can share my stories. I know, like you mentioned, like previously, there have been times when, like, one candidate might have like a few friends doing it, and then someone else almost has like a whole society backing them. And I know, again, fortunately, with technology, it was edited out. But you mentioned as well, like how the endorsements has sort of changed a bit this year. Could you let us know a bit about that?
So you used to be able to have like a meeting with society, and then the committee decides whether they're gonna back you or not, and then they would like post online. That's usually what it meant, really. But because there are a lot of societies and a lot of sports clubs, there have been a lot of issues with that, because for it to be fair, you had to have as a committee, you had to like kind of interview every single candidate, and a lot of times people wouldn't do it. Um, Not always because they had bad intentions, but also because they just didn't know. They were like, "Oh, I'm just helping a friend." They know all of us on the committee, so it just feels natural. But it's unfair to the other candidates, so we just scrapped it, and now you can't do it this year.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, definitely. Because I think, especially, it gets a bit confusing when you're on a committee already and you're going for a position. Because, like you said, before it used to be a case of they would meet without you and decide, like, from reviewing all the candidates that have approached us, we're going to sort of see this is the candidate we want to endorse or this isn't. But yeah, like you said, I think it's something that's like I don't really know the word that I'm looking for, but like it's like you said, like it's not that people are maliciously like, great, this person's on a committee and they're sort of using their position as an advantage. Sometimes you might just be like, wow, I really like what my friends put in my manifesto. So yeah, as a society, could we just please endorse them, and things like that. So yeah, no, I completely get it, and it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, let's go on to the voting, the side of things, which I'm sure these guys are all for and interested to learn about, because voting, at least while I've been at Brunel, has changed year by year, I would love to say. So I know when I started, like I mentioned before, it used to be a case of you could vote online and in person at the same time for like not 9 to 5, like 10 to 5. And there was like, it was something that happened. Then I know in 2018, uh, like, laughing is because it's just like crazy because I spoke to someone about it and we sort of just had a laugh about it. But we were saying that basically there were a lot of like, well, lack of a better word, like outside involvement, so to speak, where the election process was essentially being tampered with, and it sort of changed, and the online voting for that period was like stopped, and there was this whole rush of, oh, if you're on campus and you want to vote, you need to go to find this person now. And I know, like I had already voted, and it was just crazy because I was just walking around campus, and people were just like, "Look, here's a ballot. Like, tick a person, go vote." And I was like, "Oh, I thought it was online. No, you can't vote online." And then obviously it's changed, and I know that there's been like a online, not necessarily restriction, but there's been like a limitation on how long you can vote online. So yeah, regarding the voting online, if you know about this year, that's perfect. If not, what are some of the things about like the differences between online and in person?
So I know about this year. So, so you can't. So our voting days, and that is voting in person. Voting in person and online are 28th of February and the 1st of March. But to vote online, you can't just, you know, decide that you're voting online on the day. You have to pre-register to vote online up till 24th of February.
Okay.
Get all those dates. So it's for, because we had a lot of issues with our elections, it's much easier to control that no one's tampering with anyone's vote when, you know, there's stuff, there's ballot, it's in person, we're always there. I have a lot of shifts this year. I'm so happy. You there, you can see that no one's there. You make sure that everyone's just like in their computer. Everything's fine. While with online, people can like steal your phone and vote for you because you're logged in. People can like, you know, just on campus tell you to vote for not someone specific and then just be like, so it's much harder to control that. So for it to be safer, we wanted to do it in person solely. But obviously, there are some students who are commuting students and maybe really want to vote but don't want to spend the money, especially now with strikes, to go on campus just for that. Then, you know, they're given a chance to do it. And then, you know, we're not as scared because they, you know, they choose to pre-register. So it should be all, you know, their own choice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you mentioned, you know, like the whole reason of online, in addition for like students who are commuting, like even, you know, international students where they might not necessarily be on campus or they sort of, you know, well, I mean, voting this year is earlier, I think, than usual, right? I might be lying. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on this. But yeah, I know. Like, if people go away, for example, for like Easter, or you know, yeah, basically, if people go away, then they might not be, like you said, on campus. And voting is all. You know, everyone should be allowed to vote. And then, like I said, it's really great that even though there have been some interferences from the outside, that you guys are still sort of allowing the, like, you know, you're still working on making the process as democratic as possible and considering sort of everyone that's involved in the process. I guess, so you mentioned the days where online voting's happening. In-person voting, what are the days for that?
So it's the 28th of Feb and 1st of Feb, 1st of March. Oh my god. And it's 10 to 5, and this year it's going to be in venue. We actually planned to create like a more positive atmosphere. We plan to like have a DJ, some cookies, maybe like to, you know, bribe people to come and vote. You vote, you'll get one, or something like that. We want to like do a big campaigning area on the Crown Garden so people like can talk, and it's a little bit outside. So then, as you say, like if you voted already, you don't get people like running to you and be like, "But have you voted for them?" And when you go to Costcutter, and you should be, you know, clear there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's really, like you said, it's really great planning because, yeah, I know many of people who are just like would take the longer routes around campus to avoid just that cost cutter subway area because they knew that like they'd be approached for voting, or even like the library. They just like have a sole focus and just be like don't stop, like just headphones in, just walk straight to the library. But yeah, no, it's really great that you guys sort of figured out a way to do it that still allows people to campaign, still allows it to be good, still allows it to be fun and stuff like that, but also it allows students to also have peace of mind that once they've voted, they know that, okay, you know, I'm not going to get like people coming up to me and saying like, have you voted? Could you do this? Could you do that? Or at least out of their way, they're not doing it. But yeah, that's really good. So I guess, you know, voting ends. It's all done. When it comes to results, because yeah, we'll talk about results and then we'll talk about like actually the ushering in and then that'll be the end. But yeah, results. When it comes to the results, I know usually it's on the last day of voting, so I'm guessing would the 1st of Feb be when the results are announced?
I think it's gonna be the next day, the second,
Okay.
because it ends at 5, and the staff there needs to be like a committee.
Mm.
Like there, it's not only the one staff counting it. There needs to be like people looking at the counting to ensure that like there's not a mistake or well, that never happens, but cheating.
Yeah.
Mainly is the mistake bit. And then you usually run it like before it, but then you have to do it in front of committee and they have to approve it, and that takes time, especially on MSL. It's pretty yeah, so it's gonna be the next day, and I think we're planning to do like a result night. So once we have the results in the evening, we'll invite people and we do like a presentation and show how many votes each person got and who won.
Yeah, and for someone who's been to a results night in person and online, I will say that in person is better. But it's also nice because whether your friend is going up or you yourself are going up, it's nice to see, I guess, be surrounded by your like peers and like I mean. Again, like we sort of mentioned, the competition. Well, I say competition. It's not even a competition. The election can get a bit competitive and a bit heated. But it is nice, especially for ones where like everyone sort of like there wasn't any like foul play, there wasn't any like cheating, like you said. It is nice to sort of be like, oh yeah, congratulations, you got the position. And the other thing is as well is that most of the time like if whoever I went for a position, the other people they'll still be like, oh, actually, I know I didn't talk about this in my manifesto, but actually you raise a good point of I don't know, let's say you're the environment ethics officer that actually, you raise a good point that the university could be doing more about recycling bins or about energy usage or whatever. Get in touch with me once I've sort of been set up and can book meetings and things, and we can talk about it. And I think that's really nice because it's not sort of allowing the whatever was in this person's manifesto, not necessarily to like literally die, but like it's not like leaving it for someone else to eventually when they want to go for it to be like actually this would be really good if the university did this. It's actively being like you know come along, help me. Like, yes, I'm the one with the position and the title, but you've got a really good point that you raised, and I feel like if you know what you're doing, come alongside me and we can work together to do it. So yeah.
Exactly, and I'm really glad you bring it up because I think elections really important. It's great when you get the role, but as a Brunel student, you are part of the union, and if you want to run a campaign, do anything, you can come at any time. You don't need to like have a title to bring an idea and make it happen, get some funding. So exactly, a lot of times you get that like talking to, and I think people when they have their manifestos, a lot of times they align because people recognize what's wrong currently and they just have similar ideas. So yeah, we definitely want to aim for that kind of it's a celebration for everyone. There might be some crying that you didn't win, but like you should be proud of yourself that you did it and you spent so much time on something you cared for.
Yeah, definitely. And even like campaigning itself, like being able to go up to people on I mean yeah it's still on campus, but even that as a skill, like we mentioned about transferable skills, is like to be able to go up to like someone you don't know and be like, oh hey, I don't know if you know that elections are going on and things like that. And yeah, I feel like it's something really good. Like I mentioned, I mean you guys might not remember, but like I mentioned before, so in 2019, no, sorry, 2018 to 2019, I went to be the VP for Chills or Chimmels. In 2020, I think it was 2020. Basically, I also then went to be the BME officer, and I didn't get either. But I think kind of like what you mentioned, it's really good to sort of get those skills because, like for example, the first time I did it, I didn't have a campaign team. I didn't really know. I never lived on campus. I didn't. A lot of the people that on my course didn't live on campus, so I was basically campaigning myself. And I feel like to me, that's what sort of given me the courage to be able to do stuff like this, or at a networking event, walk up to people and ask them questions and be like, oh hey, I saw you mentioned this. This is really cool. Because yeah, like campaigning in itself is a skill. Knowing how to like talk to people and sort of, you're not like manipulating them, but you're saying like, oh, you're building common ground so you can then raise, this happened. That's only who I spoke to, and probably won't even remember this, but like I know one of the ones that sort of sticks with me is that there was this guy who was wearing this t-shirt. Again, if anyone watches our gaming segment, which again I will plug and it'll be in like one of the corners. But I talked about that one of my favorite games is Mass Effect and the whole Mass Effect universe and all of this stuff. And it was just like by chance I was campaigning one day, literally like after a lecture, and I saw that like this guy was wearing a t-shirt of it, and I was like, let me go over to him, let me talk to him and his friend. Let's see if they voted or if they're interested. And I went over and I was just like, hey man, I just wanted to say, you got a really cool shirt. I'm a big Mass Effect fan. We started talking about that. And then I was just like, look, I don't want to, like, as you can probably see, like loads of people are talking about elections. I don't want to like keep you for long. If you're interested in voting, this is my manifesto. If you want to vote, like, I'd really appreciate it. If not, have a nice day. But like I said, I just wanted to come over and just say, like, I like the t-shirt, and yeah, it'll be good to, yeah. We spoke about the game, just said our piece, but yeah, even that, like I said, is a really good thing of like how do you communicate with others well and in an engaging way. So yeah, I feel like again, sort of like what you mentioned, like whether you win or lose, like it's an opportunity for growth and for you to grow as an individual.
And you get to meet a lot of people. I made friends in campaigning, as crazy as it sounds. I didn't make any enemies, surprisingly as well. So yeah, I think it's it's still something that you just get to experience whether you win or not. Something that most people won't be in any other elections.
Exactly.
Later in life. So lots of stories for sure as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the stories we could say. But yeah, no, and then I think the last thing to sort of dive into is the sort of rolling in process. So, person's been elected, they've got the job, someone who's essentially done it twice. What I guess two things. What would be like? I guess one is a question. So it's like, what is one piece of advice? Or again, I always say one, but if you give three or however many, that's fine. What would be like advice you would give to someone who, in this coming election, you feel that actually, it's something that they should really know about, sort of going into the role.
I think the biggest one for me is always don't be scared in the meetings. People don't expect you to, be at the level of public speaking as the lecturers are. They have been doing it for a living for years, but they really, really want to hear from you. Whatever you say, sometimes you might say something that doesn't add that much to the conversation you feel, or maybe something that isn't quite right. They don't care. They want to hear you. You're often the most important person in the meeting because everything here we do is about students. So students' perspective, everyone really values, and if they don't, they should. So that would be a big one. And don't panic. You're definitely good for it. It just takes time, and once you get there, you'll start feeling comfortable.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. And then I guess the other thing is, so usually the changeover is at the end of the academic year. So by July is when sort of the new officers are sort of put in, the old officers retire if they weren't elected again. But yeah, I guess is there anything else that they should sort of know? I mean, I know you've given your advice, but is there anything else that's sort of going into, I mean, I say going into, like it's literally happening next month, but like, is there anything that people should be aware of, sort of like, as whether it's from the student perspective or from like being a candidate perspective, going into like these new officers being put into their roles? Is there anything that people should be aware of?
I don't think there's anything specific you have to be aware of. Sorry.
No, that's fair.
I think it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, definitely for new candidates, after maybe set some time aside because you will be uh, wanted for like a couple of talks once you before you start, to make sure that you kind of a little bit there before you get there, which is very good for you and definitely take advantage of that. So maybe that's something to prepare. for students, maybe something really important, like, because a lot of people see the elections as end of, like me, and the current officers are still officers till July, and maybe we get a little bit lazy around May, but we try not to. So, still approach us, and if you have a big project, we can start it and pass it on always.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, we've come to the end. Believe it or not, we have spoken about elections and the whole election process in a short amount of time. But imagine when it actually comes to the process itself, it's not that quick. But yeah, I guess again, thank you very much, Vic, for coming onto the podcast again, and yeah, speaking to us about elections. Yeah, I feel like I learned a lot. I'm sure these guys feel like they learned a lot. I guess two things, because one of them came sort of as I was saying, the swap over. So the first thing is, as usual, if there's anyone in the audience that sort of might have questions about elections, they might have questions about specific roles. Again, I sort of know what the answer is, but is it like, what would you say for someone who's sort of interested in applying but doesn't either know about the role, they don't know what's required of them, whether it's a full-time role, a part-time role, or any of the roles that are available? What would you say is the best thing for them to do?
Go on our website first, and then you can, I think the easiest way is just to email the reception and then ask, say what you want to know about, and then they will direct you to the right person. We have a whole student voice department, and they always really happy to have a quick call or a meeting, as well. Like all of as officers, we have like a slot once a week where we are in the office next to Locos, so you can always come in and just talk to us.
Yeah, perfect. And I guess lastly, this is like very like forward thinking, but whoever, if they watch this, which would be amazing because it means like I've planned this out months in advance, but whoever gets elected as the next officer for CHLMS, I mean, like you said, you mentioned you're still around on campus. So I guess my question would be, is it perfectly okay if they sort of go to you and just, if they've got any questions or queries or concerns?
Yeah, definitely. Don't ask me for support in elections because I can't give it, but I can answer the questions, and I have done as well. So, and especially after you've been chosen, then I can like fully go into it without worrying. We also do handovers, all of us. So.
Oh, perfect. Well, whether you're going to be involved in a college, whether you're going to be a part-time officer, whether you're going to be involved with NUS, feel free to, again, probably best after elections are finished. But yeah, feel free to get in touch with any of the current officers and sort of learn more about their positions, figure out essentially what you need to do and things like that. But yes, as always, if you like this episode, like, comment, subscribe is always appreciated. Feel free to click the bell notification at the bottom of the video to make sure you don't miss the next coming episode. Finally, if you want to support the podcast, because we can't do this without your support, but also if you're interested in getting some perks, we have a Patreon page where you can check out all of our content. And yeah, let us know, because I mean, we've done a few of these. But yeah, let us know if this is something that you're sort of looking forward to, like, full term. I mean, like I said, if you've got a name, again, just put it in the description, because I don't have a name for this segment, and I won't say my creativity is sort of gone, but it's been a long day at work. So it's been a long day at work. But yeah, let me know if you have an idea for this segment, and we'll sort of review it and let you guys know if we come up with a name ourselves. But yeah, let us know if you want more episodes like this, like special edition episodes, so to speak, where you can sort of hear about certain things, whether they're things going on in Brunel, whether they're sort of things going on in the wider world. Thanks very much, and yeah, we'll see you all the next time when we do an episode like this.